the August 14th meeting of the Traffic and Parking Review Advisory Board meeting. Good afternoon and welcome. This board reviews items of interest regarding parking and traffic within the city of Oshkosh. We are an advisory board and our favorable recommendations today will go before the Oshkosh Common Council. The council can accept or reject any recommendation from this board. If the board does not recommend an item and you don't agree with our decision, you may discuss that item with any common council member, and the council member may sponsor a new ordinance regarding that same item. All items recommended by this board require 2 readings before the common council. The first reading will take place on Tuesday, August 28th at 6 p.m., and you will be allowed to comment on the item at that time, though the council will take no action. On Tuesday, September 11th at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading at which time the council will take action. You will again be allowed to speak to the item at that time. For this afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time, if you'd like to speak, please step to the podium and give your name and address. I do ask that you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item being discussed. The item will then come back to this board for discussion and action. Please call the roll.
Becker?
Here.
Christensen?
Here.
Haas?
Here.
Herman?
Here.
Szynski?
Here.
Staple?
Here.
Weinschneider?
Here.
First item on this afternoon's agenda is approval of minutes from the last meeting.
So moved. Second.
Comments, questions, additions, deletions? Seeing none, please call the roll on approval of minutes.
Becker?
Aye.
Christensen?
Aye.
Haas?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Szynski?
Aye.
Staple?
Aye.
Weinschneider?
Aye.
Carried 7-0.
With the board's permission, since there is no member of the public here, it would appear, unless there's an objection, I will skip immediately to new business.
Oh, and just one item,
Oh.
and then we got council member Herman is now our council
Oh,
representative, so
okay.
that changed a little bit since the last time we met. So I think most of you know him already.
Yeah.
He's here so often, it was just,
Well, let's just put it this way. I had a conflict with the committee I was on, and this one worked better than that one. So I talked to another council member to make a switch, so we did. And being on this board for several years, it's pretty easy to get brought back up
get
to
back in the
speed.
flow. Yep.
Right, so, thank you.
Which brings us to designating Clairville Road as a through street at the intersection with Compass Way.
Yeah, this was, I think I got the right area, but there's now the transload facility, which is out in this area out here now. So our community development department, well, first they asked, trucks were missing this road, so they asked if we could so we put an intersection ahead sign over here, but it's not real busy right now, but it's getting busier. So as trucks are exiting here, they thought it would be appropriate if we had a stop sign here before they get to that intersection. So that's what that's about.
Need a second before we can.
Second.
Does anyone have any comments, questions, anything? Seems pretty simple and straightforward. Bill?
Where is the stop sign going to be, Jim?
It'll be on,
Side street there?
yeah, on
It's
Compass Way.
On Compass Way, okay.
Right.
All right,
Yeah,
yeah, all
you
right,
can see where the trucks come.
sure.
Anyone else? Call the roll.
Becker?
Aye.
Christensen?
Aye,
Haas?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Szynski?
Aye.
Staple?
Aye.
Weinschneider?
Aye.
Carried 7-0.
The next item is discussion of use of different vehicles on our roads, bike lanes, sidewalks, and park trails.
All right, this issue came up with a citizen called inquire where her son could ride his motorized skateboard. So then it got us into an internal discussion on what was allowed where. So we have 2 of our legal team here. So we got Lynn Lawrenson, who's our city attorney, and Amy, who's
Amy Vanden Hogan is our assistant city attorney, and she does all of our prosecution work, including traffic. And so she's primarily responsible for all of the really good information and putting the pictures with it, which I loved. So once we started looking at this, there's a lot of different small vehicles and scooters, and what I might call a scooter and what somebody else calls a scooter and what the statute calls a scooter were different things. So she hunted all of that down for us and put some pictures together, just to give everybody an idea of what is currently allowed and where. I guess the real meat of it is the chart that was in the materials. And it designates, what's allowed on the road, what's allowed in a bike lane, what's allowed on sidewalks, and what's allowed on park trails. You have more control over the last three. The road you have less control over because that's primarily regulated by state statute, and what they allow municipalities to make exceptions for and to allow or not allow is a little more limited. But particularly sidewalks and park trails, the city pretty much has, whatever control we want to exercise over it. And the yeses and nos mean it's allowed in those places right now. So when Jim, brought this to us and we started talking, we thought it might be a good place just to start and say, well, what's allowed right now? And then we can work from there to, do we want to limit some of the things? And I'll use the motorized skateboard as an example. As we looked at that, the person indicated it could go like 30 miles an hour. And do we want something that can go up to 30 miles an hour on a sidewalk or on our park trails? So the status right now, is it would fall under just the regular skateboard. So it would not be allowed in the roadway because it would be considered a play vehicle under the state statutes and not permitted. It would not be allowed in the bike lanes because that's part of the roadway. And it would be allowed on the sidewalk and park trails right now. Want to jump in?
I would, on the electric, it just wouldn't be on park trails because we don't allow for motorized vehicles of any sort within park trails. That was the only. But that's where electric skateboards are currently allowed. I guess it's up to everyone here if they want to expand that, if they want to restrict that. I know Lynn had mentioned the 30 miles per hour. I think something you had indicated was maybe looking at that too, because I anticipate electric skateboard won't be the only unique vehicle we come to you guys with in the years ahead. But maybe thinking of it in terms of a mile per hour limitation as well.
If something can go less than, or up to 10 miles per hour or something. You have the little kids, and I call them the Barbie vehicles, but the little four-wheelers and battery-driven, those don't go like 10 miles an hour. I live in a neighborhood with a lot of little kids. Jim lives in the same neighborhood. There are little kids that have those. Those don't seem particularly hazardous to me. On the other hand, the kids with the, motorbikes or these kind of skateboards that go faster might be more of a concern on the sidewalks. So I think the idea today was just to explain the information, give you guys a chance to ask any quick questions, and think about it more from here. So I don't know, Jim.
Yeah,
Jump back in.
that's kind of what we're looking for, to just kind of get your feedback on what, as we talk about it internally. I mean, obviously the Parks Board would deal with the park trails, but for, the road, bike lanes, and even somewhat sidewalks, what kind of do you have any questions, and what's the board's input on what you'd like to see for the city? And then obviously, it'll go through the appropriate boards and ultimately to council if we decide to change something. So that was, the goal was to say, to have Amy put together, like Lynn said first, what's currently allowed, and do we want to change any of this? I know previously we talked about the Segways, which are personal assistive mobility devices, and we said we would allow those in the bike lanes, and then they're also allowed with some limitations on the sidewalks. But so as you look through the charts, if there's any questions that Lynn and Amy could help with, and then kind of get your thoughts on
Well, one thing that's not in here, Jim, that I've seen more and more are people with the motorized wheelchairs. Some are on the sidewalks, some are in the bike lanes. Is that something that's regulated separately? Or is that considered one of these motorized scooter type things?
The Segway thing there, the motorized assisted device?
I could not find, that's a great question. I could not find anything specific on those, and I guess I made the assumption that we're just treating those like wheelchairs because they are, and then falling
Right.
under more of the like ADA, that type of thing.
Right, because the thought I had is, like I said, I've seen more and more of them going in the bike lane because it's smoother and it's easier to cross traffic in some cases and going down the ramps and everything else. I didn't know if we wanted to look at that as positive or negative. I think it's a safety thing. We want it safe for those people. I know we've had a couple times, I think last time when I was on the traffic review, we had an issue with, well, actually it was more with the buses where some of the people with the motorized wheelchairs couldn't get to the bus stop. Or the bus stop wasn't plowed out and they had to go on the road to get to the stop. So I think as that becomes even more and more possible, that people are gonna be using motorized wheelchairs, that's something we may want to address. Do we want them on the road or would we rather have them in sidewalks? Or on bike routes, things like that.
And if we're looking at this whole thing, maybe the other thing would be to also look at, is it something that you wouldn't expect at a speed? So, you know, you wouldn't expect a bicyclist going, I don't know how fast bikes go, 25 miles an hour on the sidewalk? Unless maybe they make a certain amount of noise, so you know when they're coming up on you, so they don't run you down. Or have some sort of light on a motorized wheelchair if it's going down the street, so you don't run into them by mistake. You know, have that as part of, if we're looking at it anyhow, I think, look at that too.
Because I know on, like on a lot of the bikes now, the newer bikes especially, all have some type of a flashing light on the back or something that recognizes them. So I think if we are gonna allow them on the roadway, I agree with Jim, on some kind of flashing light of some requirements so that they can at least be seen from the backside.
And, or if it's somewhere like you've got people that are running or walking on a
Sure.
sidewalk, and they're gonna go really fast and go really fast silently. They make a certain amount of noise, so you know they're coming.
Because a lot of people, sure, they're walking or jogging on the sidewalks are wearing headphones and things.
Right.
They can't hear anything coming, so,
Right.
yeah, it's a concern, I think.
There's some places where the sidewalk isn't wide enough for the wheelchair to go on it. Like I have a neighbor that used one, and I live by Ohio Street, and when they redid it, they put a lot of those big light poles in the middle of the sidewalk, so you almost have to go, the guy in the thing has to go into the street to get around it.
Yeah, I mean, the sidewalks, it's 5 feet for ADA, so those meet the ADA clearance, but what the issue is some of the, you know, the motorized wheelchairs have gotten so wide now that I don't even know, you know, they haven't changed the laws regarding that, but some of them are wider than 5 feet now. And then, well, what happens is there's, you know, as far as that goes, there's right-of-way issues, so if we don't have enough right-of-way, which, you know, like Oregon Street, you know, the decision was made to keep it wider, which makes the sidewalk narrower, so those light poles are gonna go right back in the sidewalk, but they'll still have, you know, the 5 feet ADA clearance. But that's what that issue is. I mean, you know, I guess we could look at that, how we should handle motorized wheelchairs. I mean, it's an issue for me on multiple fronts. There's, you know, the sidewalk's more of a public works, but that is an issue. There's an issue for them, you know, just, this is a different topic, but for transit and paratransit, because they've gotten so big and heavy now that the paratransit vehicles are having some issues with, you know, the ramps have to hold more capacity than they already do, which is about 800 pounds. And I know there's other issues too as people, you know,
Right.
get bigger and their devices get bigger. But anyway, that's kind of a separate issue. But yeah, I know that has been brought up in the past, and we've talked about it. I know from the police department issue, they've kind of, you know, they're obviously allowed on the sidewalk, and they've kind of let them use the bike lanes and haven't really bothered it too much. But that's something that we probably should think about.
I know one of the things that we talked about as staff was maybe putting some kind of, you know, you don't know what the latest, greatest gadget's gonna be, but how do you feel about like a limitation of how fast you can go on this sidewalk? Because it, like I said, the one, it's at like 30 miles an hour. To me, that seemed really fast on a sidewalk.
Yeah.
that, you know, we could do it in terms of that kind of limit rather than trying to define everything that can or can't go on the sidewalk.
And I admire that, Lynn, but there's some ambiguity there from I would argue, a legal perspective, because a 14-year-old girl on something is gonna go a lot faster than Herman or I on that same device. So displacement, voltage, if it's electric, is probably your better bet, just from my perspective.
And I also think, and there's a sergeant here from the police department, might be hard to enforce speed limits on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, unless an accident happens, you know, somebody hits a pedestrian on the sidewalk, then speed might be an issue. You know,
Well, and generally, everything always, on our sidewalks that we regulate now, you have to, they all say yield to the pedestrians.
Okay.
Whether people do that or not, that I don't always know, but the, you know, the rule would generally say pedestrians, you know, have the right of way or the first use of the sidewalk. If you're on a bike, you're, you know, or something else, you're supposed to watch out for the pedestrians, so.
I'm gonna question, are golf carts or ATVs allowed on any streets or anything? Or?
There's a special provision for golf carts that I don't think we adopt at all, that you could allow them in certain places by statute, but otherwise normally they're not allowed. And I don't think we adopt it because I don't think we have anywhere that we needed to adopt it. ATVs, I don't believe are allowed on.
Yeah, I
didn't
wasn't
look
sure
at
which
those-
category
yeah,
they came
I
under.
didn't
here.
look at those specifically, just because I was looking more at the play vehicle type vehicles on this. I know there are specific rules on ATVs. I would have to look if they can go on an actual roadway.
There might be, because I know there are some trails and stuff, and there might be trail crossings, but I'm gonna guess that would be the most that they would be allowed on. Just
Well, they have
to
to be
drive
de-
an ATV down the
Right.
street, I don't think
The
is.
DNR requires you to designate an ATV route, which we
yeah.
wouldn't have probably in the city. The closest one in Winterville County is out in Waukon, and there's one in Eureka also. But what I'm seeing on that note is more and more of the people that are doing snow care in the winter are using ATVs with plows, and they're driving from one
Property to another.
property to another, and it might not be just down that nearest street, but then they got a little flashing light going on. So, I mean, I'm sure the police department's run into that already or seen it maybe, but, I mean, how far do we want to regulate everything? I mean, it becomes almost, you know,
Vicious circle.
Right.
But, yeah.
right.
If they're removing snow, they're making something safer, right?
Right, well, that, and we have a bare sidewalk policy, so,
Yeah.
you know, but in that respect, yes, you're right, they're making it safer. and
Technically, they should probably be trailering.
Trailering
yeah,
from point A to
from
point B,
A to
but
point
how far do you want to go with it?
Right.
That's just it. And actually, part of my question got answered on, I don't know what page it is, but under miscellaneous notes, in bike lanes, it talks about electric personal assisted mobility devices are allowed in bike lanes. I guess wheelchairs then would be considered that.
Yeah.
It's permitted under statute 349-23, parent 2, parent A, so.
I think actually the personal assisted mobility devices are, it's, the way it's defined by statute, it's a Segway.
Oh, it is, not a,
It is.
not a
It's
wheelchair.
not a wheelchair,
Okay,
no.
all right, well, then we'll go to, keep looking for that one.
Yeah, that's confusing. That's what I
Yeah,
thought initially when we
Yeah.
first talked about it, but then the more you read it, it's like, well, no, that's a segue, but.
Okay.
What do you guys think about motorized skateboards?
I was gonna go there next, and I think that's a dangerous proposition if in fact they do or will go 30 miles an hour to keep on a sidewalk.
That's
But
what the specifications indicate, where it's sort of
Again,
that it can go
obviously-
up to that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously weight's gonna play a role in that depending on who's on it, but even at 20, it's probably, I mean, you imagine those whizzing past the front of your establishment, Jim?
Yeah, and they're
It's-
quiet.
Yeah. So I mean, my preference would be to bar those from the sidewalk as well. I don't know that there's a way we can mandate that they have a noisemaker, for
Right,
lack of a
but-
better
but
term.
then you were also talking about some little kids ones that go 6 or 8 miles an hour, isn't it? You were talking something
Yeah,
that's
they have
similar?
the little,
But that's not an electric skateboard.
no, it's not in.
Yeah,
It
and
isn't,
that's what
okay.
I'm looking for,
Okay.
is some definition in state statute. And I've got another question about a similar topic for later, but, I mean, how do we come up with a reasonable ordinance that covers a sufficient amount of bases to get to the means or the end that we need?
They can't see the officer pulling over some
Yeah,
little
a
kid in
4-year-old
in
and
a
a,
Barbie
yeah,
little car, but.
They are.
but a 15-year-old whizzing down the sidewalk
Isn't
at
that-
28 miles an
it's a
hour.
different situation.
Yeah,
And to figure out how to distinguish those in an understandable fashion is, but we kind of wanted to get a little bit of an idea of a direction, and we can, bring back or, send you back some drafts and get some feedback on that too, so.
I always see a lot of skateboarders using the streets and just moving aside for traffic.
which, if you read, is
Yeah, yeah.
not allowed.
Technically, they're supposed to be on the sidewalk or the, or a
I
trail.
think maybe the easiest way would be anything motorized, scooter, toy, whatever, is in a bike lane and the sidewalk is for bicycles and pedestrians. And that's much simpler way that way they know up front that.
Less
if I have a
complicated we make it,
Yeah,
yeah.
if I have one of these electric scooters, I can go in the bike lane, but I can't be on the sidewalk with it.
With an exclusion for motorized wheelchairs?
Well, I don't know. We gotta look that up yet. I don't know how that falls, because I'm sure you see a lot of them every day. They
Well,
go
and
by
I'm thinking,
this.
I'm 80 years old and I'm in a motorized wheelchair. There's no way I'm going in the traffic.
No, I'm thinking it's identified
Yeah.
under this electric skateboards, motorized scooters, and pocket bikes, or whatever they call
We
them.
might have a problem with that because of because the bike lanes are in the roadway.
Right?
They, technically, to be on the roadway, it has to be something that can be registered. So they're
Bike
considered
has to be
still
registered, yeah.
play vehicles, and there's no registration available for some of those the electric scooters or the little mini bikes or those things. So,
But you have a couple different kind of bike lanes. You have the shared, and you've got the,
But it's still the roadway.
it's still, they're all in the roadway though,
well,
technically.
Yep, and there are like statutory exemptions for like motorized bicycles. They don't have to be registered, but that's specifically stated in the statutes. You don't have to be registered.
Okay.
It gets kind of weird because there's a lot of little technical, you gotta really piece it back and forth between the statutes and the ordinances to make sure we're okay
Yeah,
with what we do.
But I guess, playing off what Dan said, if there's some way you can say, hey, we don't want something 30 miles an hour going
Yeah.
on, that make it so the police can enforce it and all the rest, and it's easy for everybody to understand.
There may be some things like the little the small motorcycle things that just, if we ban them on the sidewalk, they're not allowed on the roadway. They can ride them on private property, but that's gonna be it. Just so you understand that there just might be some things we can't, because of the way the statutes are written, we can't allow in the bike lanes, but that they just aren't gonna be able to then use them other than on private property.
And not to sound nostalgic, but that's the way it used to be. I mean,
Yeah.
you rode your mini bike in the backyard.
Yeah, and I think that's, the skateboard regulations initially were designed, obviously, for manual skateboard, and the thought was they weren't allowed on the road because you can't control, if you lose, the things can go flying into the road or whatever, which,
Right.
that was but now, you put a motor on it, and then that's where we get into this, is it a motor vehicle, or is it a play vehicle, or what is it? And that's kind of where this all came from.
Are the hoverboards considered like the electric skateboard, or?
A hoverboard?
Yeah,
Oh, they're out there, yeah.
yeah, I
It's-
see people using
They
them.
catch fire, but they're
Yeah,
out.
I would think, I would think it would be similar to a motorized skateboard in terms of speed and the different things that you can use. I have not tried one, but I don't even know what a hoverboard.
It'd probably be more like a Segway,
It's
because it has a wide track.
Yeah, yeah, 'cause it's sideways.
There's also something with like one wheel that is different
Yeah.
than that too, that.
Well, and like, I know right now that Segway's made a device that almost looks like rollerblades. You have two little tiny ones that you go on, and so that's what I mean, that there's going to be a multitude of items that continue to come forward that we can't even think about here, right?
Which is why I think we go back to displacement if it's gasoline or diesel powered, or a voltage limit, because obviously that's gonna dictate how fast it can go. And what that would be, I don't know. But because I think no one, unless you've got a crystal ball down there, ladies, is gonna be able to figure out what the next. Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't be
Doing
here.
other things,
Yeah.
yeah.
The other question I had for you, if you can share some insight with me, this draws a distinction between roller skates and inline skates. One can be used in the road, the other one can't.
That is statutory action.
I get that, but I was wondering if you had any insight as to why that was done that way, because it wouldn't seem to make sense.
The inline skate people had a better lobby?
Yeah, well, that would make sense, but
Yeah,
it
when
should.
when inline skates came in and were a fad, people wanted to be in the roadway, and shortly, I mean, I've been around unfortunately long enough to know this, but it came in very, very shortly after inline skates became popular, and people wanted to be in the roadway, and it went up to the legislature and got its own exception. But I think they thought the roller skates they left because it associated more with younger kids and still didn't-
Flip-ons.
Yeah, and didn't want them in the roadway yet.
Well, and again, it makes perfect sense. It seems just a tiny bit hypocritical to allow one and not the other, but. So all that being
Okay.
said, did you get enough information to do what
Think
you
we can-
needed or wanted to do?
Well, I guess
Yep.
one last thing I
Sorry.
just wanna
Okay.
bring up and make it easier for our legal folks. On page 6, it talks about, can a local municipality permit operation of motorized scooters on roadways, sidewalks, or bike paths? So I guess it just basically says we have to follow state statute. We can't go outside of state statute. So I guess if you're looking at regulating anything to do with, bikes, scooters, whatever the state statute is, that's pretty much what we have to abide by. So we can't make it stricter than what state statute currently is. Because it looks like there was a couple cases where they tried to do that, and they lost their court case.
Overturned.
It was overturned. So I don't think we want to be in court fighting those types of ordinances.
So it might bear some research on what those are,
Yeah,
so that we come right up to the line, not go past. But I firmly believe we don't want 28-mile-an-hour skateboards going up and down Maine and Oregon.
and I also think, we, with having bike patrol officers, they probably see some of the violations, so maybe you could talk to some of those officers and just get some input from them to what they're seeing or what problems they may be seeing that we could assist in either an ordinance or changing something that might, work out pretty well too.
And I think the other thing is just to make it more clear, because we do
Right.
get the questions, and right now, we have to go to kind of multiple places for
Mm-hmm.
people to know. And, even we got, the question came up from the police department.
Sure.
that the person had called there initially and they weren't able to answer, so it came to our office. So just when we do get it done, I think that it may be useful to have some kind of, document that people can access, or even for the officers that they can, look at, and here's the rules in a little more readable fashion, because as you can see, even we had trouble chasing everything down.
And I know the quadricycles are gonna come back up to council. Are you gonna bring that back to this group too? Those quadricycles, the beer bar
Oh,
thing
oh,
or whatever, you're
oh.
writing an ordinance on
Yeah.
that,
Yep.
so. Do we have to weigh in on that, this board?
No, we decided that really that the quadricycles were, well, that came through the economic development, and kind of what was decided was that the city wanted to allow them, but was going to regulate what routes they can use. So we decided until they come forward with some type of routes that's at the point we'd evaluate it and say, okay, well, does that route make sense or not? Because now all they want right now is just somebody applied for a license.
Right.
Yeah,
But-
we're just establishing basically the
Well,
the
that
licensing
was a couple years ago
provisions
too,
right
somebody
now.
came forward and it didn't go anywhere, because I think it went through the Parks Board, because they wanted to go up and down the Riverwalk with it.
Yeah.
With what is?
With this quadricycle,
Oh,
they wanted to
okay.
go, and the Parks Board,
The draft that's gonna come forward to you would prohibit them on the Riverwalk.
okay, good.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of crowded, wouldn't it?
And bike, and park trails and all that kind of stuff, right? Or don't you know yet? Because that was
Yeah,
the
I can't
issue.
recall specifically.
That was the issue when
Yes.
on the Parks Board when it came up. They were concerned about because the size of the width of the trails aren't very wide
Yeah.
in the park, and this would take the whole
And
trail.
that, yeah, that was the concern that we had at drafting it, was because you don't want people falling off in the river because
Right.
you're
Yeah.
avoid-
The,
Right.
the ordinance gives, the city control over where that route is. So it's not just no park trails or no roadway,
Okay.
no river.
So they actually have to have a
It's-
designated
They
route.
will, as part of their on the proposed ordinance.
They
would
will
be,
they will.
Here is where
say
we will
here-
be.
yeah.
So then does that fall under a special event permit, like almost like, where the route has to be approved by the council?
The council would approve the route. Staff would review it. I don't know if it would come, are you planning to bring all those through here?
We could.
And
I
then
don't think we thought that far
the
ahead.
recommendation would
Yeah.
go to council.
Well, you know, that's the thing, and I'm just thinking with some of the concerns we're getting with our neighborhood associations, I'm sure that some of them may not want a
That
loud,
boat running
noisy
through
thing
there.
going through their neighborhoods.
Well, and I'm not on the front line for this, but from what I understand, they're looking at operating it, down, basically down towards the arena, that area.
Okay.
So it's probably just that.
At least this first one.
Okay.
That's what but again, they haven't come forward with any route, but that's on their concepts, that's what they were discussing. So what the legal department did was putting together a proposed ordinance that basically lays out the requirements for, getting a license, what you have to do, and one of those provisions would be to come forward with a route, which the route would then have to be approved. So I think from an internal staff perspective, from what I know, it seemed like, the staff was leaning towards being okay with it, the police department and the community development, everyone. But if they got a license, they would have to come forward with what route they're gonna use, how it's gonna, more specifics.
And hours operational. and
Yeah.
stuff. Okay.
So I think the first provision is just kind of establishing what they would have to do to get a license.
Does Appleton have one of these? I know that they talked about it there too.
Yeah, Appleton does, yeah.
Yeah.
That I don't know. Yeah, I'm just gonna know some background on it. I'm not really on the front line with that one, but I know some about it.
Okay.
Have we exhausted that one?
Just like,
I think that gives us good
Oh,
direction.
Bill, sorry.
I'm just looking at the motor bicycle, and this would be a bicycle that has like an electric, usually it's an electric assist. A lot of times they won't go just solely on battery power. I guess I would wonder why that vehicle would not be allowed in a bike lane. Is it because of speed? They're probably not going to be going much faster than a regular bicycle.
Oh, no, I beg to differ. I've seen one tool
Well, I
up
have-
Ohio Street at 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, I have two. There's somebody out there's that one that's really juiced up.
Oh,
But
okay.
But it's a kit that he put on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the standard motorized assist bicycle probably will go maybe 20, 25 miles an hour. I'm just saying, I
Yeah.
think they should be allowed in the bike lane.
Yeah, and I don't know, the definition of the motor bicycle on here is a bicycle to which power unit not integral part of the vehicle has been added to permit the vehicle to travel speed of not more than 30 miles per hour with a 150-pound rider on a dry, level, hard surface with no wind and having a seat for the operator. And then this B is a two-wheeled or three-wheeled vehicle that has fully operative pedals for propulsion by human power. This is what you're talking about, I think, and an electric
Correct.
motor of less than 750 watts. And that is capable, when powered solely by the motor, maximum speed of less than 20 miles per hour, with a 170-pound rider on a dry level hard, boy, they really get detailed. With.
I think
We can
enforcement's
take a
gonna be
closer
it.
look at that again, just to make sure they can be permitted in the bike lanes and how that's addressed.
They could be if we wanted to, because they're exempt from registration, so they can be on the road, but right now, our ordinance does not provide for them to be in the bike lane.
I think that's a good point, because I know that, I do know people have those, and maybe that gets back to Dan's point, is maybe you do want to allow them up to a certain, level voltage or whatever you call that, in the bike lanes, but if they're going to be like a motorcycle, then obviously you don't want them in the bike lane. So that's probably, we want something like that, I would assume. Because you can get going, if you're, a serious bike rider pretty fast on a pedal bike, but I don't think you want like a motorcycle in the bike lane, obviously. So.
Like I said, this was just kind of our introduction to it. I anticipate we will come back to you with where we are at and just, again, take the pulse. Everybody's comfortable with what we want to propose before we would actually bring it to council. Because I think we would want to probably take it through and make sure that we have consensus from
Bike and pedal probably
Bike
want
and
input.
Ped and
then parks for
as
their
well.
for their trails, yeah.
So it's going to be a little bit of a longer project, but you're our first shot at it, so.
Happy to be the guinea pig.
Yeah, and I think that's what we want, is just to, when people call and ask, we can give them some clarity where they can ride it, and then, the officers have some clarity too. And we don't want to prohibit people from having fun, but we just want to make sure that it's safe for everyone.
Everybody's safe, yeah. All right,
Thank you.
good deal. Thank you. Which then brings us to staff statements.
Okay, I just had a couple things. The no left turn from Jackson on to New York, that was approved at council after our last meeting. So the signs are currently up. We did order the electronic signs that have the illuminated no left turn. There was about a 6 to 8 week lead time, so we're hoping to have them by the end of August, and then once we get those, we'll get them installed as quickly as we can. We're pretty sure we can program them too, so they only come up during those hours, but that's something a little bit new for our electrical staff, but they're pretty sure we can do it, so.
We still have the guy that did it at Merritt in Maine?
Yeah, but
Okay.
that one's permanent.
Well, that's true, okay.
We were gonna look to see if we could program it so just from 3 to 7 it
Yep.
would come on.
Oh, I
and
get
that's
it. I just-
and I believe we can. It's just gonna be a little learning process of how we do that.
Is there like a warning sign before you approach the intersection? Or?
Yep, that's what's up there currently. And I know the police department's done a little bit of education so far. I think what the plan was from talking to Captain Kaiser was once, school's back in session, then they'll do a little bit of an education period before they get into enforcement.
One of the things you point out in your paragraph here, Jim, is that the middle school principal has been,
Yes, and they have a new principal, and I did talk with him, and he said he'll be, put that information in the back-to-school newsletter.
well, don't overlook the elementary school principal,
Sure.
that conversation. Obviously, we're only hitting half the,
Yeah.
give or take, half the population.
Yeah, the only reason I wasn't as concerned with them is they get out at I want to say 2:40 or something like that. So.
But still, stragglers,
Right.
I mean. Anyone have any questions other than, I guess, the ones I asked on that issue? All right, then,
So we'll see how that goes, and then after we get some data, we can report back. Then the other item was, now that we've had the road reconfiguration or the road diet, if you call it that, on 9th Avenue, it's been pretty well received. I've gotten some feedback from residents who thought that's the greatest thing. It's been overdue. They really appreciate it. I've only got two complaints. One of the people that was concerned about it prior, and basically, from my perspective, just doesn't like the change. But they didn't really. There was nothing I could really gauge from their comments that was, something that'd be concerned about. So anyway, but then another resident called and asked about Oakwood from 9th to 20th, and he said, have you ever considered a road diet there? And I said, I have seen where it's been discussed in the past. I said, we haven't really went anywhere with it. If we were to do that, there's currently parking after 6 p.m. and on weekends, I believe, during that stretch. So, you know, the first step then would we'd have to remove parking, and it is a wide road, so we could do something like that. But I just wanted to get kind of the board's input if that's something, you know, I should investigate further. Something you're interested in. If it is, I can investigate it further. If not, then, you know, I probably wouldn't pursue it until we get some more requests. So just wondering what your thoughts are on
Yeah, I
that.
drove this road a couple of times after this came to my knowledge here, and I don't really see the need for it at this time unless you get like a lot of more stuff out on 20th that would be driving down that. Doesn't seem like there's enough traffic.
It is.
Yeah.
It is a lot less traffic, obviously, than 9th and obviously Murdoch as well. But
I drive it twice a day myself. I just drove it like half hour ago, and it, for a major street, I think it's a very good street. I think I would agree with Dan, at least for now, it's, unless you're looking to solve some problem, particularly for,
no, not at this point. At this point, it was just, I thought before I pursue it, and people get really worked up about parking. So
Yeah.
before I go there, I wanted to see if there was something that, you know, there was any reasons we were interested in doing it in that particular area.
The concern I've had, and I've expressed it on prior occasions, is the lack of consistency as you go up Oakwood Road. Okay, it's 2 lanes, it's 1 lane, it's 2 lanes, no matter which way you go between essentially 91 and Witzel. I think we do everyone a disservice because, quite honestly, as someone that is on that road multiple times a day for various reasons, people become confused. And again, I don't know who handles that part of town.
Well, that's
OPP.
because a section of that is in the town of Algoma.
I
And
I
unless
get
they
that,
agree
but
to the 4 lanes, you're not gonna get it, and they don't agree to it.
I get that,
So-
but the section that we're actually talking about is within our jurisdiction.
Yes, that is in our
And
jurisdiction.
so the point I was gonna make is, if we can get some consistency there, so that it's 2 lanes all the way from 9th down to 91, because you get past 20th Ave and it's 2 lanes. You go north of 9th and it's 2 lanes, again, town of Algoma. So why doesn't the city of Oshkosh conform with those around us? And again, we've had this conversation, there's parking that's apparently desired there, but is it really utilized? And is it worth the opportunity cost? Because I, on more than one occasion, have witnessed someone turn right from near the yellow line onto Rougefield or one of the other side streets, Newport, whatever the case may be, and nearly cut somebody off because they didn't expect someone to be on their right.
How much longer is Oakwood? Isn't that gonna be the dividing line where the city of Oshkosh goes out to in a few years?
Corville's gonna be
Yeah.
the dividing line. Because we're already annexed up to Corville.
So I just see it as a source of confusion. And in fact, I've had law enforcement from outside the area comment that have come in to meet with me in my office about other traffic issues around the state. And one of them commented, to the effect of, what are you guys doing with that? Because it's
Yeah.
confusing.
It would be, it wouldn't be 100% consistent, because it would be, if we did, we'd probably put the shared left turn lane, so it'd be, be 3 lanes versus 2 or 4, so it would be different. But yeah, it wouldn't, the big thing, we'd have to remove the parking for, I don't know if, I guess I can see that one either way.
I guess at the traffic counts, again, like we did on 9th and Murdoch, and I guess accidents, those are both 9th
Right.
and Murdoch issues. I guess if you have a little extra time to just look at any numbers.
Yeah, I can do that.
Speeds become an issue if the police department is running some radar out in that area for some reason or another. If we get some documentation that it would warrant that, then otherwise I think as popular as that area of the city is becoming, and with Casey's Meadows expanding, Rouge Park, master plan being done, I think you're gonna see more and more traffic out that way, so I think people are gonna object maybe, or maybe the more traffic will warrant to what Dan is saying to look at it, so statistics usually drive a
Yep.
lot of what we bring forward to
Yeah.
this board, so.
Sure. I mean, I can definitely look at the traffic counts and see what the accidents are out there so that's a good first step. I can do that as I have some time.
Is it 4-lane by the hospital, or?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
Ninth going south is all 4 lanes.
No,
I mean,
ninth
what's,
going north
Oakwood-
North is
is
Oakwood-
4 lanes, up till,
Oakwood, is Oakwood
to
4
Witzel.
lanes by the hospital, I thought, or?
yeah, Oakwood is 4 lanes in front of the hospital.
That's what I thought.
And then it changes to,
2.
well, yeah, 1 in each direction, south of there, but again, we all know it's used as 2 in each direction. That's the common practice.
Anytime I've driven on it, there wasn't that much traffic, the people just drove in the lane closest to the center.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah, and then once you
Doesn't
get into the town there, which you can tell where,
Further north there.
you can tell where the city and the town starts because it's where the sidewalk ends and where and they did an overlay in that area, so it's bright black, so you can kind of tell, but that's currently the border. But then once you get it down towards, Festival towards 21, then it's 1 lane each direction, but they just have that shoulder,
Right.
painted out. So, but okay, yeah, I can definitely do that. And then the only other item I had is, that I think the board would be interested in is that, so the Neighborhood Association and Council approved at the last council meeting some funding for a traffic study for Jackson Street from Church to Murdoch. So our planning department's gonna run a request for proposal for that, and then, hire a consultant to look at that area and see if there's anything that could be done to mitigate traffic impacts in the area.
Does anyone have, although it's not, I suppose, technically an agenda, anything for a future?
Yeah, well, I don't know if we want to talk about West Bent Avenue, the complaint we got from the Neighborhood Association. There's something that this board should be looking at. Did you get that email from Ann Reesel?
Oh, yeah. That's a tricky issue because so the neighbors that live on Bent between Algoma and,
Wisconsin?
yeah, that's it, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So, over the years, they perceive it as being used for cut-through traffic, which, when the construction was going on, it was more so than it probably is now. However, the concern, and this is a common concern, is, speed and then, children playing, which, I try to tell the residents that, children are playing in every neighborhood in the city. So I completely understand, but it's hard to regulate based on that. So she was looking for any type of, traffic calming measures. However, I think the first step there is the police department's gonna put their speed board out there and
Right.
get some data to see, is it a real speeding or is it perceived speeding, or what does the data show?
In the email, I'll just elaborate a little bit. I know Jim got it too. She talked about that it's the Lumber River Neighborhood Association, which is a newer one.
Okay, interesting.
But that in the last year and a half, 16 kids apparently have moved into the neighborhood. They range from ages 1 to 1.5 to 14 years old. They're requesting, as Jim said, a police department to do the speed board thing, and even if they thought maybe a speed bump like we have on, was it Congress by Payne, would help. They have some association funding that could offset the cost. They were looking at more of a temporary one that would be in from like spring through fall and have it taken out during the winter, so Public Works didn't have an issue with
Fall
that.
impact.
Was one of their suggestions, and if we had any others, so I don't know if there's something for a future agenda item. And then one other thing I got, and maybe you can answer real quick, I got 2 citizens contacted me about West Haven Drive at 21, the new West Haven by Choice Bank. Apparently, there is only 1 through lane, and then there's a right turn lane, And if there's cars turning left, the through lane, they're wondering why the right turn lane can't be also a through lane. And I said, I don't know if that's controlled by the state or if we have control of that intersection at 21 and West Haven Drive.
Yeah, generally 21, the intersections are generally the state.
Okay.
But
They were wondering if there could be two lanes going south, going straight, because apparently there's quite a bit of traffic there. And there's like a designated left turn, and so
yeah,
that lane gets backed up quite a ways.
well,
back.
the issue with that, and the states looked at it in the past, this was a few years ago, because I know I've talked to them about it before. I mean, it's kind of a horse apiece. You either have either a dedicated right or you have a dedicated left. So if you have a straight right, then the right turners are waiting for anybody that wants to go straight at the light, right? So if you have a through left, then you're waiting for anybody that wants to go left. So generally, they try to look at, well, which one has more vehicles. And at the time, when they looked at it, they said, well, that one they said is really close to either way. They said they could actually see it either way. But,
Okay.
it was I want to say it's a right turn only, or no, it's a
It
left
is a
turn
right-
only.
When you come up, if you're going south, either you go right or you go left, straight.
So it's
or
straight left, yep.
Yeah, straight left. And I guess with the bank there now, they're saying that there's more people now
Right.
in that intersection because they're crossing the intersection to go to the bank.
So the
Now
right
it's backing
turns,
up.
yeah, so the right turn's going to Highway 41. So at the time,
21, it's going right.
yeah, so,
Conroe.
right, but it's going, yeah, right. So at the time, they thought there was more vehicles
Going that way, but now with the
probably,
bank there, like I said, now maybe it's a time to have the state relook at it, to have two through lanes, because you got more citizens coming from the West Haven area going to that bank probably, and now there's more traffic being backed up on West Haven Drive.
So the traffic's backing up north of 21?
Well, it's backing up people going south as they come up to the intersection. There's only one through lane traffic,
Right.
and they're saying it's getting backed up
Okay.
because of the
Right.
way the light setup is.
Yeah, last time we looked at it was the
There's more
south
cars
side
back-
of the intersection.
Right. I'm
So you're talking about the north side?
North side
Okay.
intersection, yeah, by the
Yeah, where they
bank.
just changed the name.
Yeah, so we're talking about the opposite sides. But
Yep.
I know people have asked about that south side of the intersection, why it was set up that
Yep.
way, and that's,
So this will be the north intersection.
okay.
So,
Alright. Yeah, I can ask them about that and see if they've done any, I mean, obviously with it being so new, I'm sure that they haven't looked at that at
No,
all.
I'm sure, because it's only been approved, what, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, we can look at that.
Okay. Those are the only two items I have.
Anyone else with a future agenda item? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move it.
Second. Call the roll.
Becker?
Aye.
Christensen?
Aye.
Haas?
Aye.
Berman?
Aye.
Krasinski?
Aye.
Staple?
Aye.
Schwann Schneider?
Aye.
Carried.
Good night.